Good morning, and welcome to the Division of Drinking Water webinar for May 30th, 2018. I'm Colt Smith. I'm going to go ahead and guide us through this today. Mute off my headphones because I'm getting a delay. We're excited to have today, we're going to have Ryan Deering from the division. Ryan joined the division in January of this year, and he's going to present the bulk of our webinar today on batch disinfection and some of the dangers in that and how the division is addressing it. This has become an issue that we've put a lot of focus on this year, and is a lot of our training that's going out to sanitary surveyors this year. It's one of the things we want them to be looking for, and so we're going to go ahead and present it to you today so you can learn the right way and the wrong ways of batch chlorination and when it's okay and when it's not. Few reminders. June starts off with the bulk of lead and copper and disinfection byproduct sampling season. If you're due for lead and copper and you're on reduced monitoring, so you're greater than 6 months, June is your starting season, so start getting ready for that. If you're not sure when you're due to sample for lead and copper or disinfection byproducts, make sure you're checking WaterLink and looking to see what's due this year. If you're a seasonal system, that's also a good time to make sure you're checking and ordering your bottles for your nitrate samples. July 1st is the deadline for consumer confidence reports for CCRs to be submitted to the Division of Drinking Water. So all of you community systems, if you've done your consumer confidence report and distributed it to your water systems, make sure that you have a copy to the Division of Drinking Water by July 1st. Make sure you're submitting those to DDW reports. I've backed off from doing a lot of the consumer confidence day-to-day stuff, and I'm work sharing that with Brandy Smith in our office. So I'm doing some of the QA/QC on it, but Brandy's doing the bulk of the heavy lifting when it comes to consumer confidence reports, and she should be your go-to person for those. And rather than trying to keep up with how we've reorged, you're just better off submitting everything to DDW reports so that you know that it's going to go to the right person here. Seasonal startup, it's time for a lot of camps are going to be opening. If you're a local health department lab or a laboratory or part of an institutional team that has a lot of seasonal systems and you're watching this today, make sure that you've submitted your seasonal startup form, and you've done your procedure, you've taken your investigative sample. And again, it's a good time to remember to go ahead and order your nitrate samples and check WaterLink to see if you have anything else due this year so that you can make sure to get those in while you're open. Sanitary survey season also kicks off with summer. We do them year-round, but because we have so many seasonal systems and systems that we can't get access easily to springs or wells until there's snow thawing, the bulk of sanitary surveys happen in the summer. The division has readdressed a lot of what we've done with sanitary surveys in the past year. Part of that's why Ryan's here. He's been heavy on the training circuit, going out to local health departments and conducting trainings on what to look for in a sanitary survey. And as part of that, make sure that you're looking at your water systems. If you're a water system who's watching this today, make sure that you're up on that. Look and see if this is the year that you are due for your survey. And if so, talk to and find out what you can do to prepare for that. You can always watch these webinars for up to 6 months after the webinar airs and gain CEUs for that by completing the quiz. The quiz link today will be posted after Ryan's presentation, partially because I wasn't sure what questions I could put in there until after I watched it. So that'll be up very shortly after we publish this to the web today. Some news. The website is continuing to be redesigned here at the Division of Drinking Water. That's going to probably be an ongoing effort for, I would estimate, the next forever, at least going on for a year. But probably it will never be done, as with all things. But when we have a functional and close to final state, I promise you one of our webinars is going to be bringing our web team in to show you how to navigate the new Division of Drinking Water website and find all the things that you need there. We have a new email that's similar to DDW reports. It's specifically for IPS corrections, meaning that if you have a deficiency or a violation on there that you need corrected with IPS, you can send it to ddwips@utah.gov, and that will go directly there and maintained to that person as well. Works very similar to DDW reports, just specific to IPS corrections. We mentioned last time that we now have a new form to request a corrective action plan. It's called requestcap.utah.gov. That form is for if you have a significant deficiency identified during your sanitary survey or your level 1 or level 2 assessment, and you need more than the 30 days or 120 days to address that deficiency, you need to request a corrective action plan. This form will walk you through it and answer the questions we need to prepare a corrective action plan to get back to the system. If you do not request a corrective action plan and that 120 days or 30 days expires before the significant deficiency is corrected, it will result in a groundwater violation or a treatment technique violation. And that's an additional IPS points, as well as putting you on to the EPA, the federal enforcement targeting system. We've got an upcoming training that we'll either do as a webinar. I've done it once out in St. George last week at a rural water training that kind of goes over enforcement and corrective action plans and how those fit in as well. And finally, we have a new staffer in the rules section. Tammy Allen has joined on. She is handling the bulk of our support work. She's going to be mailing our letters, doing a lot of our data entry, and has just taken that on and been fantastic already. She's been for maybe 2-3 weeks now, and we're excited to have her. And we will have the next webinar, we should be able to announce our new lead and copper rule manager and the new scientist, and at that point the rules section will be fully staffed. Permitting, I think, still has 3 engineers they're looking to hire, but we are continuing to staff up here at the Division of Drinking Water, and there's going to be lots of new faces and names for you to get to know. All right, with that, we will go to Ryan. I'll pull up his presentation. All right, Ryan, all you.
Okay, as Colt said, I'm Ryan Deering. I'm one of the new employees at the Division of Drinking Water. Been here about 4 months, almost 5 months. But before that, I worked for 25 years in the water industry as a water operator. And so I've been around, just not at the division until now. So today I'm going to talk about batch chlorination and a little bit about emergency response. So I'm the emergency response coordinator for the division, and you can see on the screen the number in red is the 24-hour cell phone number. So if there's anything you need to report to the division or you need help with, that's the number to call. Again, that's 24 hours, and we can see what we can do to help you out. So what is emergency response? That was the question I had when I got here, as far as how it applies to drinking water systems. Some of the common calls that we get are for tank intrusions. That's where someone broke into your facility, broke into a tank. Sometimes they go swimming in the tank, things like that. Things you don't want to have in your drinking water. You don't want to have this guy right here. If this is your system, you've got a problem. Bad bacteria samples. That's a very common one, and one that we give a lot of technical assistance on, as far as addressing the issue, what samples you need to take, how to address the problems in your system that might be causing those bad samples. And so that's a very common problem. Chemical spills. This is one just last week. A truck drove into the Price River ahead of their treatment plant intake. And chemical spills are a very regular call that we get. And again, we can help with the response for that, sampling, that kind of thing. So how can we help? The Division of Drinking Water is part of the Department of Environmental Quality. And we, along with the Division of Water Quality and Environmental Response and Remediation, respond to all of these types of events that might impact water in general, and specifically drinking water with the Division of Drinking Water. Here at the division, we can offer engineering support, technical assistance, and also coordination with other agencies. Some of those other agencies include local health departments, Rural Water Association of Utah, private sector assets, and also police and fire entities that all are geared toward helping the public water system and addressing whatever needs they may have. So when we get a call at the division, it goes into what we call the ERT, Emergency Response Tracker. And in there, we record all the information. We can send emails. We can pass the information along to people that need to know. And that way, it's all tracked, and we don't have long email chains that get lost and convoluted and that type of thing. And it's recorded, and everyone who has access can read it at any time. Also at the division, we have the Emergency Response Workgroup, which is comprised of division staff, rural water staff, local health department staff. We meet together quarterly to discuss the recent emergency response events and any emerging issues that need to be addressed, that need further discussion and definition. And so that's another important tool that we use to keep moving the bar forward and addressing upcoming issues. So what are the emergency response events? Well, in this graph you can see there's quite a wide range from natural events, chemical spills, cross connections, sometimes customer complaints, people call in to complain that needs to be investigated, tank intrusions, MCL violations, operational issues, but by far the largest number of events that we have are from positive bacteria samples, either total coliform or E. coli positive. And a large number of those result in boil orders or do not drink orders. And that's when you're on the news and having to notify the public, and it doesn't look good for your system. So that's something we've noticed as a problem, something we really want to address. And so that's why we're here today. So in early 2015, the division started tracking all emergency response events. And in tracking those, they showed a high number of boil orders resulting from systems that were batch chlorinating. So in January 2018, the division came out with a batch chlorination workflow, and that's designed to define batch chlorination and provide an outline for technical assistance and enforcement if necessary. So what is batch chlorination? It's defined as the process of periodically adding a disinfecting agent to a water system in lieu of performing approved continuous disinfection. And it's further defined as when a system adds a disinfectant to avoid coliform positive samples. Some examples may include manually adding a disinfecting agent at the source or storage tank, such as a spring box, to address ongoing water quality issues in the distribution system, the installation of some type of unapproved mechanical means of dispensing disinfecting agents into the distribution system. There's some pretty creative people out there that come up with all kinds of homemade means of just administering chlorine to the drinking water, but anytime you're putting chlorine into the drinking water and adding any type of chemical, that method needs to be approved, reviewed, and make sure that it's doing it the right way. And so that's really what the discussion's about. So some common stories that we hear here are system only chlorinates once a month to pass their back T samples, or they chlorinate between positive and repeat samples. When you're taking your repeats, they should be under the same conditions as the original sample. And so if the first sample is bad and then the system chlorinates before the repeats are taken, that's kind of not giving a good representation of the actual conditions in the distribution system at the time the original sample was taken. And a lot of times a new operator takes over a system and their back T's start failing, and that's because the old operator was batch chlorinating in order to pass their samples. So the new guy comes in and doesn't understand why their samples are now going bad. And so that's when they call us. So the rules defining batch chlorination, Continuous disinfection is recommended for all water sources. It shall be required of all groundwater sources which do not consistently meet standards of bacteriological quality. So that means that Utah is not a mandatory disinfection state, but for groundwater sources, that is, unless you can't consistently pass your bacteriological samples. So as long as you're passing your samples, you're fine. But if you can't pass them without chlorination, that's when chlorination becomes required. And then intermittent or batch disinfection, such as adding hypochlorite tablets or concentrated hypochlorite solution to a tank, is not acceptable for ongoing operation if continuous disinfection is required. So is it really a thing? I was pretty skeptical when I first started at the division. We had meetings about batch disinfection, and it was kind of a big topic, and I thought, well, how big of a problem could this really be, and is it worth all of the effort going into the discussion? Well, in my short time here, I've had quite a number of operators and water systems admit that they either are now or in the past have been batching, and so yes, it is a pretty common thing. And so our first step is to educate, let people know that it really is a problem. And if you have to be batch chlorinating, we really need to move into the direction of approved permanent disinfection, or address the issues that are causing the need for the batching in the first place. So why is batch chlorination bad? Number one, it masks quality issues and physical deficiencies. You might have problems with your reservoirs or sources, or something in the distribution system that those should be addressed first, rather than just covering up, masking the problem with adding chlorine. It can harm infrastructure. Chlorine is a very strong oxidant, and applying it in large doses or applying it improperly is very corrosive and can cause severe damage to your infrastructure. It changes the water chemistry. It's unevenly dispersed. It's usually unmonitored. Most systems that aren't required to chlorinate aren't taking routine residuals in their distribution system, and it can be harmful to public health. So again, we talked about corrosion. You need to be very careful with concentrated chlorine. It can cause damage to anything metallic in your water system that it comes in contact with. Chemistry. One thing we're learning more and more all the time, especially since the incident you've probably heard about in Flint, Michigan, is that maintaining consistent water chemistry is very important in a water system. One thing about chlorine is that it's again a strong oxidant. And so what that does to, if you've worked in the water system, you've probably seen pipes like the picture on the right, cast iron pipes that have large iron tubercles on the inside. So the chlorine actually oxidizes that iron into an insoluble oxidized state. And as long as it stays that way, it's not a problem. The problem is if you add chlorine and then you take the chlorine away, you can change the redox, and that iron can then become soluble. It erodes the shell on that tubercle, and you can release that iron and other metals that have built up over time into the distribution system, and that compounds on itself. Any chlorine that might have been in the water is now being masked and used up by all the debris that's been released. And so it's very important to keep the water chemistry as stable as possible. So once you are adding chlorine, you need to continue to add chlorine and maintain that water chemistry. The masking problems. Here you can see an obvious problem: tree roots growing up through the floor of a tank. This system had been batching, and you can see the reason why. They had cracks on the roof of the tank where water was leaking in from the top, and roots growing up from the bottom, which were both pathways for bacteria to get into their system. And again, it's better to address those deficiencies rather than just covering it up by adding chlorine, intermittently, that is. Why is it bad biology? It takes time to kill bacteria and other organisms in the water. And if you're only batching for a few days of the month, what's happening the other 20-something days of the month? Your system's not protected. The people are drinking that water. And so if the quality isn't good enough to pass the samples without batching, then the people, whoever's consuming that water, are exposed to those pathogens and contaminants for all the other days of the month when the batching isn't happening. So if batch disinfection is verified, it's a TD25 violation. That is, the chlorination process is not continuous. That's a significant deficiency. Significant deficiency means the system has 120 days to address the violation. Otherwise, they'll get a notice of violation, and an additional 35 IPS points will be added for not addressing the significant deficiency. The system can submit a corrective action plan to resolve the deficiency if they need more than the 120 days, or if necessary, a compliance agreement or enforcement order, in order to give them a timeline to address the deficiency and add permanent disinfection. It takes some time, and there's some paperwork involved, and so we realize it's not going to be an overnight fix, and so we will work with you on getting that resolved, but it is a significant deficiency and does need to be resolved as soon as possible. So is batch chlorination ever okay? Yes, sometimes it's necessary. In emergencies, if you have cases where you have positive E. coli samples and you need to address certain special situations, water quality complaints, things that are unusual in the system. If you have a cross connection, there's a lot of reasons why it could be necessary. Seasonal startup is a big one. Seasonal systems that only operate for certain periods of the year. It's a good idea to chlorinate when they first start up and clean everything out of the pipes. Or temporarily until you can approve permanent disinfection or install approved permanent disinfection. You might need to continue batching until that occurs. Anytime you put a chemical in the water, it has to be NSF approved. So even if you're batching for legitimate reasons, you still need to make sure that the product you're using is NSF approved. It should have the NSF label on the container, and just to make sure that it's safe to add to drinking water. So along with that, the approved methods are listed in AWWA 651 for water mains and AWWA 652 for storage tanks. And so those documents lay out all the details on exactly how much to dose, how to apply the chlorine, and that way you're doing it the right way and making sure to protect the public health if batching is necessary. A lot of cases could include water main breaks, maintenance on your reservoirs. There's lots of legitimate reasons to periodically disinfect, but you need to be following those AWWA regulations when you do that. Here's an example of a temporary chlorination chlorinator. These are becoming more and more popular. And the good thing about these is that they have all the proper equipment, they're monitored. So this is not a bad way to do it if you're temporarily chlorinating. Again, that way it has all the proper equipment and monitoring so that you're doing it the right way. With that, you need to make sure that anytime you're applying chlorine that you use approved methods such as an injector quill. You can see that on the example on the right, they had a direct tap into that saddle, and the chlorine corroded that pretty quickly. So again, just be careful. anything metal that the concentrated chlorine comes in contact with, it will corrode. So you've been batch chlorinating and you want to get an improved permanent disinfection installed. What do you do now? Well, on our website, you can go on the links on the left, go to plan review, hit the down arrow, and that will guide you to the plan approval process. It's I won't say it's easy, but it's fairly straightforward. And we have engineers on staff who can help you with any questions that you have. So the basic procedure is you need to submit your engineered plans for approval. Division engineers will look it over and give plan approval. At that point, you can install your permanent equipment. And then once it's installed and everything is passed off, you can apply for and be issued an operating permit. But all those steps have to be taken before your chlorinator goes into operation. So once you have your chlorinator installed, you need to report your chlorine levels, and there's two ways to do that. One is the reporting your distribution system residuals, which is an online form, and then the quarterly chlorination report, which is the chlorine that you're adding through your chlorinator. So on your chlorination report, the form's changed a little bit and now has a drop down, so you can select the type of chlorinator that you're using and the form will change accordingly. So you hit the drop down, you put in the type of chlorinator you have, and then the columns will change depending on that answer. And in there you record the amount of water that you're treating, the setting on your unit, the pounds of chlorine you're using. Those are the basic, the categories are the same, but obviously the means are different, whether it's gas or a liquid or tablet. So on the far right side of the quarterly report, you can record your distribution system residuals. If you're a small system and you're taking less than 30 residuals a month, you're required to take at least 3 a week, and so a minimum of 12 for all chlorinating systems. If they'll fit on that page, you can record your residuals on that column, and then you can average those out. And when you report it on the distribution system form, you just put that monthly average for each month. If you're taking more residuals in a month than will fit on that form, then you can just record those separately on an Excel sheet or whatever, and then average those. And all they're looking for on the distribution system form is that monthly average. So in conclusion, chlorine is your friend. Chlorine has done a great deal of good for public health, but we need to make sure that we're doing it the right way. It needs to be approved. It needs to be monitored. We don't want to poison people. Not killing people is, I think, our goal in the water industry. So get our messages, just do it the right way, make sure that we're protecting public health, and keep that goal in mind. This is the real reason why we're here. We want our friends and families and loved ones to be drinking safe drinking water. We're not here to avoid violations. We're here to provide safe drinking water, and that really needs to be our goal and the aim of everyone involved, whether it's the water system or the division. Everybody we're all on the same team to protect public health. And that's all I've got.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan. And I don't think we have any questions in the chat. Just make sure. Yeah, we look good there. All right. Thank you. Raise your back spots. All right. Thank you again for all of you who are watching us live and those of you who are watching us later. If you want CEUs, you're going to need to click the link that will be in the description of the video below. You might have to click see more to see that link. If you're watching this on the division website instead of on YouTube, you won't see that link there necessarily. Part of the redesign sort of took away some of the stuff we were doing on our description, and you may need to click over to view it on the YouTube channel, and make sure you click that link there. Like and subscribe our webpage and our YouTube channel so that you get the updates about when these are coming out. The next one will be in June, probably towards the end of it. One more reminder is to just keep in mind that we are coming up on summer vacation season for division staff as well. We are actually people outside of this office. And so we do tend to leave occasionally for periods of time. We do our best to try and communicate if we're working closely with you about those absences and give you people to get in touch with. If not, just be patient and go ahead and call the main line, and we can usually put you in touch with somebody else who can help you with whatever you're working on. Both Rachel, Cassidy, and myself have cell phone numbers that you are welcome to text us on. If you're having a hard time getting a hold of us, those are really good at getting back to you very, very quickly on those. And you just have to listen to our voicemail messages to get that phone number. And we are great at getting back to you through text message or calling you back outside of the office when we have the opportunity to do so. Again, thank you for watching, for listening, for all the work that you do to making Utah water safe and giving us that assurity. And we look forward to seeing you in June when we'll have another exciting webinar presentation. Thank you.